Welcome back to the IBSP. Here's your host, Foxy New.
David Benavidez fans exposed. And look, let's break it down honestly and objectively as possible. And the first David Benavidez fans that has to get exposed is Z. And he states, you can't defend this man. Canelo is a fraud. He's scared of the real monster, David Benavidez. Now, he says this in reaction. He says this in reaction to Canelo Alvarez being mandated to fight William Skull, his IBF mandatory. Now, what makes no sense is you're saying Canelo's ducking David Benavidez because the IBF made a mandatory decision on Canelo? That makes no sense. And honestly, if we're being honest and unbiased about it, David Benavidez is the one who decided to move up in weight. David Benavidez is the one who said he's no longer interested in the Canelo fight. And David Benavidez is the one who refused to activate his mandatory and left the weight class before his mandatory was called. So at the end of the day, if you want to blame anybody for the Canelo Benavidez fight not happening, you need to look at David, moron. But then let's get to the next one. The next one says ice cold raspberry tea. He states David Benavidez was Canelo's mandatory for 4 years. Now that Canelo's fighting a mandatory, it's okay. So here's the problem that I have with this. He said Benavidez was Canelo mandatory for 4 years. For 4 years. This is why you can't trust anything he says, because he's blatantly lying. David Benavidez was not Canelo Alvarez mandatory for 4 years. The David Benavidez versus Demetrius Andrade fight set the mandatory for Canelo. That was their official fight to set the mandatory for Canelo, and that happened in 2023. So how has it been 4 years? That makes no sense. And actually, David Benavidez mandatory was about to be called this year, and yet David Benavidez decided to move up in weight. So if you want to be mad at anybody, you need to be mad at David Benavidez for deciding to move up in weight before his mandatory was called. See, at the end of the day, it ain't been 4 years. Canelo ain't been leaving him hanging, and David Benavidez lost his belt twice for him being undisciplined. So if you're mad at anybody, be mad at your king, David Benavidez. And the next one is C-Lab. And he says, Duck Nello cherry picking again. This is your king. So he's saying that Canelo Alvarez is cherry picking William Skull, even though no decision has been made, no fight announcement has been made. But he's saying if he fights his mandatory in William Skull, he's cherry picking. You cannot cherry pick a mandatory, dumbass. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You don't get to set your mandatory. You can't cherry pick a mandatory. How stupid are you fans? Think about this. That means by this same logic that if Canelo fought David Benavidez, he'd be cherry picking his WBC mandatory. Are you really this stupid? Please, David Benavidez fans, wipe your mouth off.